Thank you all for coming back for week 2. Hopefully you found some value in week 1, which was all about the planning stage. Today, we're going to get much deeper into the actual writing of the book and some thoughts about the publication process, the different ways that that can be handled. So again, last week we left off with the book planning tool. If anyone needs me to, I can bring that back up and we can go through it again. But if you guys are good, I will jump right into this week's material. I think everyone was here and was present for that part. So one of the first questions people start to think about before they even write, or maybe after they've written a little bit, is whether or not they should go traditional publishing or self-publishing. Real quick, does anyone have any questions on what either of those mean? I'm going to explain them in more detail, but I know people toss around the terms a lot. So if anyone has any questions before I drill down into it, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them.
Take it away.
All right. So just some disclaimers. There are pros and cons to both methods. We're going to talk about both. Please keep in mind, all of this is just from my humble professional experience. There are other people who may have different experiences and feel a different way. By and large, I am using a larger sample size than maybe one person who wrote a book and did it one way. We have dozens of clients who have chosen different paths. So this is a compilation of all those experiences. There is no one size fits all answer, kind of what I was just alluding to. What is right for Katrina may not be right for Amir. It's all going to go back to those objectives that we spoke about in week 1. What is your definition of success from this project? And there are so many options and services out there. Whatever you do, please be cautious. Everyone wants to separate authors from their wallet. There are good expenses and there are bad expenses. We'll talk through some of those, and then hopefully that's going to be thought-provoking where you guys have some questions. I know last week I was very clear on never cheap out on your editor. That's one of those things. Cover design. There are some areas where publishing companies, maybe they're not the best place to spend your money, and we'll talk about those. So the traditional publishing process, just to give you a very high-level overview, if you say, I want to have my book traditionally published, that means one of the big household name publishers, Random House, Simon & Schuster, McGraw-Hill, Tor, depending on the genre you're in, most likely it's going to be one of the ones that I mentioned. Getting a publishing contract with a traditional publisher is kind of like making it to the Olympics. Just because you didn't make it doesn't mean you're any less of an athlete than someone who did. There's just only so many slots in the Olympics. The same is true for traditional publishing. Each publisher is only set up to do a limited number of books per year. And because of that, they are incredibly selective as to who they pick. 9 times out of 10, actually 99 times out of 100, you can't even go to the publisher directly. You need to use an intermediary known as a literary agent. Literary agents all have different specialties. So if your book is on self-help, there are certain literary agents who specialize in that. If your book is on financial literacy, there are other literary agents who specialize in that. There are books out there. I have one laying around here, but you probably can't see it with my screen anyway. It's called The Guide to Literary Agents. It's like 1,000 pages. And it will tell you every literary agent in the country, what they specialize in, what their submission guidelines are. And that is incredibly important to pay attention to, because if you're sending it to, let's say you know of a literary agent, I can't even think of one off the top of my head because there's thousands, and you want to send your work to this particular person, but they don't specialize in your genre, you're setting yourself up for heartache. They're not even going to read your query letter. So align your submission with an agent who specializes in it. Most agents are going to require a book proposal. That book proposal is very similar to a white paper in business, a thesis in education. It has several components. One is your proof of concept. So they want to know that you've looked into other books that were written on the subject, how well they've sold, when they were published, who published them, market research, who you are and your marketability. So there's an entire section of the book proposal where they want to know what social media channels you're on, what your follower base is, if you have any media exposure. So if you've ever been on news programs, if you have the ability to get back on news programs, then they're also going to want 2 sample chapters and your outline. The reason they want all of this is they have very long-standing relationships with the publishing houses they work with. They're not bringing just any project to the publishers. They want to bring something that they believe is going to make everyone money. One of the misconceptions in writing is that when you traditionally publish a book, the publisher is going to do all of this marketing and book tours for you. Not true. Unless you're Stephen King, James Patterson, they may get the lion's share of their publisher's marketing dollars. The everyday author is not getting that. They want to know you have that social media presence because they're going to rely on you to help make book sales as well. So if you've accepted that you're willing to put in all this work, that's great. Next thing to know is the average response time from a literary agent is 6 to 8 weeks. And that's if they respond at all. All of their websites will give the disclaimer that due to the volume of submissions they receive, they will only respond to ones they're interested in or make their best effort to tell you they're not. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, maybe 40 out of every 100 will even have the decency to respond back and say, we're not interested. If an agent wants to represent you, then they will shop you to a publisher. That process can now take another 6 to 8 weeks because they're going to go to the people they know at Simon & Schuster and say, hey, I have this book. They're going to wait until they have time to read it. At that point, if you're fortunate enough where they say, yes, we're interested in taking this further, you've spent 8 weeks on the literary agent, 8 weeks on the publisher, so you're down 16 weeks. Now they're going to assign their own editors and cover designers to really refine the final version and packaging. You don't get a whole lot of input here. So their editors may come in and say, we want chapter 3 gone completely, or we want you to add something in here. You're most likely in a position where you have to take their suggestions or you lose your contract. Same thing with the cover design. They'll bring you a couple concepts, you choose from it. You don't get to tell them, hey, no, I really want my nephew on the cover. Doesn't work that way. You're giving up a chunk of your creative control to allow them to put their imprint on it. So in a nutshell, the pros and cons of traditional publishing. Pros, there's a level of prestige people have when they say, hey, my book was published by Simon & Schuster. Possibly there may be some advances involved, which is where the publisher gives you a check up front before your book ever makes it out. Those checks can be as small as $5,000. I have known clients on my podcast who have gotten 6-figure advance checks. One thing I want to clarify on advance checks, though, they are not free money. They are exactly what they sound like. They are an advance. So when your book starts selling, if you got a $100,000 advance check, the first $100,000 worth of royalties your book makes goes back to the publisher to pay off your advance. So yes, it's nice to get the money. I'm not saying I would turn away the 6 figures, but it's not that advance. And then you're going to make your book sales. You don't make $1 from book sales until you've paid the publisher back. Other pro of traditional publishing is you're more than likely going to wind up in bookstores like Barnes and Nobles. As an independent author, we'll cover that later, not quite as likely. And there is still some marketing dollars because you're in a bookstore and they do invest in their titles. The cons, it's a lengthy process. As you saw before, you're at 16 weeks before the editing and cover design even starts. You could spend the better part of a year just getting a finished product, and then it has to fit into their production run. Traditional publishers know what they're publishing usually a year to 18 months out. So your book may not see the light of day from the time you sign a contract for close to 2 or 3 years. If you're okay waiting with it, that's great. But if you're using your book as a tool for a different reason, you may not want to wait that long. Cons, as we said, less control. You are not in final control of the editing or your book cover. You're going to get lower royalties than if you publish it yourself. And in almost all cases, you're relinquishing your book rights for the length of that contract. The publisher owns your work unless they go out of business and the rights get reverted back to you, or somehow you guys amicably dissolve your contract. So before I go into self-publishing, anyone have any questions on the traditional publishing material I just went through?
Hey, Matt, if for some reason your book flops and you don't sell $100,000 worth on that 100 advance, I'm assuming you pay that back.
You know, Lane, that's a really good question. And I have never had the, what to ask any of the authors I know, whether they've been in that situation.
I mean, there might be disclaimers that the publisher does take that chance, but
I would probably do what I do in every situation like this and defer to making sure your contract is read by your attorney before you sign it.
Glad I was able to stump you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And good point. In any incident with anything, even independent publishing, hybrid publishing, have someone who knows contracts read your contracts, not just your cousin Jim, unless your cousin Jim's a lawyer or has read a lot of contracts, because you may not need to pay a lawyer, but someone who at least can look at something. Like, I know Marissa's shaking her head because we had a situation where I'm not a lawyer, but she asked me to look at something a publisher had sent her. And I gave her my unofficial opinion. And then I believe a lawyer told you it was 4 pages of screw the author?
Well, yeah, they use the F word, but yeah.
So yes, have someone that knows a little bit more than you do look it over. And when in doubt, if you have to, pay the lawyer. It's the best money you'll ever spend. Thank you, Lane.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the percentages of royalties that you get from traditional publishers, average versus self-publishing?
So every traditional publisher is different, and I haven't seen enough of their actual contracts to tell you. Word I'm hearing from authors I've worked with, it's usually somewhere between like 15 and 40%.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So now I will move into self-publishing. Self-publishing, for the purpose of this conversation, is going to include hybrid publishing, vanity publishing. Those are all different sub-genres of the self-publishing process. And any questions anyone has, we can dive more. The self-publishing I really like to speak to is the one where you do it all yourself, because you are retaining 100% control. That also means with 100% of the control, you have to handle the editing, the cover design, the interior formatting, making sure those pages look nice, right? When someone turns it and everything lines up and your margins are clean, and everything that makes someone want to keep reading your book so that it looks professional, and the uploading to whatever platform you're publishing on. As of right now, the 2 main platforms that I would say most authors use when going it completely themselves is Amazon and Ingram Spark. No right or wrong answer between the 2. Amazon is always my preference, just because they are the largest book distributor in the world. And once you put it up with Amazon, it winds up everywhere else anyway. Ingram, if you go with them, they ultimately feed it over to Amazon anyway, and you're kind of just paying them to be in the middle. But we could talk more about that later. You can also use an intermediary. That's what I was talking about with hybrid publisher and independent press. Also a subject matter expert. So pen for hire in certain instances for our clients are kind of like that SME consultant. If they don't want to go any of the extra roads, we can help them get that finished product up. Independent presses, I'm going to say, are a little, in my opinion, a little better than hybrid publishers. Those are generally, they align themselves more with the values of a traditional publisher. They have an imprint. They're hopefully not taking any of your money to get this up for you. They may offer you editing services and cover design services and do it all in-house, the formatting. That's okay. Your hybrid publishers are ones that are more like your vanity presses. Some of you may have heard the names, and I won't throw out too many, but like iUniverse and Zilibris. These are companies that charge you fairly high package prices where they're going to get your book published. They're going to put it in bookstores. They're going to do your marketing. They're going to guarantee you everything under the sun. These are the ones that I tell everyone to run away. That you're not getting most of what they're promising you. They can never guarantee you they're going to get you into Barnes and Nobles. No one can really guarantee that except a company that has a contract with Barnes and Nobles, and those are your traditional publishers. So there's tons of them out there. I've come across some small ones. I actually have 2 very small presses that I work with now who are incredibly reputable. They don't charge their clients anything extra. We have a partnership where we do some writing for their clients, but there are far more out there with bad reputations than those with good. So just always read the fine print and ask yourself, why am I paying for this service and is it really needed? So I think I actually just said some of this. Exercise caution, too many companies out there. Yep. If you're doing everything yourself, do not look for the cheapest options. I'm sure you've all heard this before, but you can't have all 3, fast, cheap, and quality. 2 of the 3, maybe, but 3 of the 3, no. If you're going to get something fast and cheap, it's definitely not going to be quality. If you're going to get something cheap and quality, it's probably not coming fast. So keep that in mind. Probably better to figure out what your overall budget is when you start looking into publishing and decide, what do you have to spend on everything that needs to be spent on, right? How much do if you have $10,000, what's the best cover I can get for X dollars? What's the best formatting I can get for this amount of dollars? And make that work with your budget, not simply try to find the cheapest solutions in every category. So continuing on the process, the reason I stress that fast, cheap, and quality, your book is representative of your brand and the value that you provide. It's counterintuitive to put out an inferior product. If you want to be known as the best life coach in the industry and your book looks like it was thrown together over breakfast, people might think you take the same approach to coaching. If you're the best web designer in the world and your book looks like the format and other things that are maybe technically geared are out of whack, people are whether it's right or wrong, they're going to assume that if they hire you to work on their website, that they're going to wind up with something that looks sloppy like that. So if you take the time and invest the money to go through this process, again, maximize whatever budget you have. Even if that budget is very little, you can still put out a great product. You're going to have to do a lot of work yourself. You're going to have to do a lot of learning and leverage some people to help you. Just do not rush out an inferior product for the sake of saying, I'm a published author. Because while saying you're a published author is great, once people ask for the book, you want to have some pride of showing. Here's our self-publishing pros and cons. So the pros, you control the timeline. Unlike that traditional publisher where it's at their mercy, if you get that book done today and you've got the budget and you can pay to fast track a cover, formatting, and editing, you can get your book out on your deadline. You control the finished product. You can pick any cover designer, any graphic designer, anywhere that you want, pick any imagery that you want and make them put it together exactly how you want. Higher royalties. So Marissa asked the question before about traditional publishers. With Amazon, for domestic distribution on print books, their standard is 60% after printing costs. On their Kindle ebooks, as long as you price the book between $2.99 and $9.99, you actually keep 90%. So much higher royalties. They'll even allow you to do expanded distribution into other countries, and then they give you the breakdowns of if your book sells in India, this is the percentage you would get. Whereas with your traditional publisher, oh, one thing I forgot to mention, I'm sorry guys, I want to back it up. You're also, when you have a traditional publisher, your literary agent is also keeping 10 to 15% of your book sales as a commission. So whatever that standard rate they're giving you, you're then paying the literary agent. Once you go into the international market, Your publisher is giving you lower royalties and your literary agent's taking a higher percentage. I know it seems counterintuitive. So with that said, Amazon will let you print in any country you want that they do business in, and they will tell you upfront exactly what percentage you're going to get. It's usually in the area there of 30 to 40%. Another pro, cheaper author copies. So a lot of these presses and publishers, they make you buy your books at a discount off the retail price. So if your book's $20, maybe they give you a 50% discount. You're going to get it for $10. That same book probably only costs $4 to print. When you publish through someone like Amazon, you get to order as many books as you want at that printing cost. So if you're doing an event and you want to get a case of 100 books, it'll cost you about $400. We just had a client who finished up a book for a book launch out in Los Angeles. She ordered 500 books. And I think the entire thing ran her like $2,500 with shipping and everything. So gives you more control. Also, no middleman. You are dealing directly with the platform you're uploading to. You don't have to deal with your agent, your publisher, your editor. You're dealing with everyone that you picked. You're not just dealing with the person they've assigned you. Cons, more financial investment, right? Publishers are going to pay for that editing and that cover design for you. Up front, you're going to pay for all of that. There's more of a learning curve. First couple books that I put out myself, after a year or two, I went back after learning what I learned and reissued both of my books because I realized how many things I did wrong. So there's definitely a learning curve. There's a little less prestige, although nowadays that's almost not even fair to say because independent publishing has become so accepted. In fact, I love to give everyone this example. If anyone knows the movie The Martian with Matt Damon, that was an independently published book first. It did not have a traditional book contract, and for some reason, no one liked it. It sold so well on Amazon that they got a traditional publishing contract. They had to take it down. Yes, some changes were made, but that was a strategic decision. Self-publishing does not preclude you from getting a traditional publishing contract if the book does well. That's like the unicorn. He also went on to get a major motion picture contract, which is like unheard of. So if you're going to put the book out on Amazon and you have thoughts of some point of looking at a traditional publisher, make sure your marketing strategy, your sales, your book launch strategy, Catherine Brown can speak to that. She's very good at marketing her book, getting reviews. Those are all things that will make a publisher turn around, maybe not for that book, for your second book. When you say, hey, I've sold 1 million copies of my first book, they may now take notice and say, well, we want to crack at your second book. It's also more work to get into bookstores. There's no question about it. You have to really work the independent bookstore market. Barnes and Nobles does have some forms that you can fill out to try to get on their list. Again, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of waiting. We do have clients who have somehow, like, they've gone to their local libraries and gotten their books placed in the library. Not sure what that does for prestige, but there are ways, if you put in the legwork or you have a team of people who are willing to make the calls. I mean, if you can get into the Grand Central Library in Manhattan, that may do something for your book getting traction versus getting your book placed in the local, I don't know, small town Pennsylvania library. So just some things to think about. Publishing thoughts. We just went through one of them. The second point, which is a self-published book can be awarded a traditional contract. The first one I didn't cover yet. When you're traditional published, so if you've traditionally published and you're not happy for any reason, when that contract expires, you can get the rights to your book back. So you don't have to renew it. I mean, depending the term of the contract you've signed with them, if it's a 5-year contract and in 5 years you feel like they haven't done the right thing for you, and there's another publisher you want to go with, or you want to take it back and rework it, you want to independently publish, whatever it is, your rights always revert back to you. As a literary work, you own the rights of that work for the entire time you're alive, as long as it's not pledged to someone else with a contract. So now we're going to dive into the writing. that was just some forethought. So I would love if anyone has any questions now. I'll take a break, drink some water. Please let me know, and then we'll dive into some of the ways that I think are helpful for people to actually get the writing done.
Hey, Matt, do you typically see first-time writers go the traditional or self-publishing route?
90% self-publishing. 10% want to go traditional, and probably 8% of those wind up coming back and going self. All righty, if we have no other questions, let the writing begin. Writing, like anything else, is a discipline. If you're trying to work out and you've never been to the gym before, you're probably going to want to take it slow. You're going to have to get some systems in place, get some behaviors, some disciplines. Writing is no different. And some of this may sound obvious to those of you who write or run a business, but a lot of people don't equate their business to their writing. So first thing you need to do is pick a space where you can write without distraction. That may be, and I'm not making this up, that may be getting in your car and driving around the corner, parking it somewhere and writing. I used to do that when I had a 9-to-5 job and I wanted to write on my lunch break, because I knew if I was anywhere in sight of the building and someone saw me, there was too much possibility to get interrupted. So I would drive around the corner, sit at a park, and write in my car for 30 minutes after eating lunch. Schedule the time and have realistic expectations. So if you're someone whose schedule is already jam-packed, it might be unrealistic to say, I'm going to schedule 2-hour writing blocks twice a week. You may want to start with, I'm going to do 30 minutes every Saturday morning, or I'm going to do 2 15-minute, there's no amount of time that's too small to start. And then for output, I hear too many people say, oh, I needed to write 1,000 words today. I needed to write 5 pages. You know what? It's not predictable because it's creative. Every time you sit down, you're not necessarily going to have tons of information come to you. So if you commit to small amounts of time and say, if I can get 300 words done, that's great. And I think we can all wrap our heads around 300 words, because we write enough emails in a day that exceed 300 words. We probably send more than 300 words in text messages in a day. 2 pages, whatever is reasonable for you. If you're already someone who's writing 5 pages a day and you're struggling with the new book, cut it down to 2. Give yourself some gratitude, some grace. You're not going to gain anything by beating yourself up. You'll burn out and you'll stop enjoying it. And when you don't enjoy it, you don't want to do it. If you go to the gym and you're not having fun, or you're not seeing a result, most people wind up quitting for that reason. Big pro tip here, turn off your phone and your Wi-Fi. I personally write by hand in a notebook with a pencil, because if I write anywhere near my computer, chances are I've forgotten to take my own advice and turn off the Wi-Fi, and I hear dinging. And now no matter what I do, it's like Pavlov's dog. I heard a ding. So it's time to check the email. And the longer I try not to, the more it's sitting there saying, well, what if it's important? If I didn't hear the ding, it doesn't exist. So do that. If you have to leave I have clients who I've made leave their phone in another room. Even if it's downstairs and they write upstairs, make it as hard as possible to be distracted. Because once you get in a groove, you're not even going to realize your phone's not there or that your computer's not dinging. It's okay to walk away if the words are not coming. So if you're sitting there for 10, 15 minutes and you're just writing the word you're just writing in the beginning over and over, walk away, take a walk, breathe. Don't jump into doing something else that's not writing related, though, because that's just going to set you down the path of being done with writing for the day. If you still have 15 minutes left, take a walk around the room, take a walk around the block, try to clear your head. If you meditate, there are so many different strategies people use. Just don't try to force yourself to write. So with that said, everything, in my opinion, is writing. Just don't use it as a crutch to avoid actually writing. What do I mean by that? There's a fine line between the things that we need to do to write our book and the things that we pretend we need to do to write our book. So depending what you're writing, you're probably going to need to do a little bit of research. You're going to need to do a little bit of organization of all your notes and your files and your content. You're going to need to do some outlining so you know how you want this to go. Working on any of these three things is all part of the writing process. Where it becomes a problem is where you know you should be writing. You have something to write about, and you're like, well, no, maybe I should just do a little more research. When you're doing that for the sake of not writing, and if you've done it, you know what I'm talking about, because we do this in all areas of our life. It's not just writing. Like I'll do this with cooking dinner. Like, oh, I just need to figure out something else before I actually start the cooking. No, I already know what I'm making. Just start cooking. So if you've done your research, your organization, your outlining, start writing. Don't feel like you need to go in order. If you have an outline with 17 chapters, and that may sound obscene, but I'm going to use a real life example because this happened to Marissa and I about 2 weeks ago. We finished the client's entire outline. It's 17 short, concise chapters. Like, where do you want to start the actual writing? Like, she's like, all right, let's start at the beginning. All right, that's logical. About 5 minutes in, she's like, no, you know what? We got to go to chapter 9 because I got something that happened to me today and it's related to chapter 9 and I need to get it off my chest. So we went to chapter 9 and chapter 9 just flew because that content was top of mind for her at the moment. Every time we're done, this same client actually says, thank you so much. Like, I never realized how much information is trapped in my brain and how much space I have left to do new things after we finish a session. So that's kind of I don't even have this in the presentation, but an unsung benefit since I'm talking about it. All of these things that you're an expert on take up room in your brain. When you put them down on paper, it gives you a sense of relief and it frees up all of that capacity for you to do other things. I never looked at it that way until, the second or third time. I was like, wow, this really is like therapeutic for you. I'm glad. So keep that in mind. There is no right or wrong way to do this. When you start putting your content together for your reader, please remember it's not about being right. It's about being relational. Your book content should never be to convince somebody that what your opinion is, your point of view, your subject matter, you are right and they are wrong, because no one is going to want to read it. You want to be relational. Yes, you want to get your point. The whole point of writing your book is so people can benefit from your knowledge, but it has to be done in a way where your readers can think and learn. Think about a little kid. If you tell a little kid not to do something, they're most likely going to try harder to do it. It's the same thing with adults, right? If you read a book that tells me, well, you need to eat this way and only this way, or you're going to be fat for the rest of your life. Well, guess what? Then I'm going to be fat for the rest of my life because I don't like the way you just told me to do that. But if you start explaining to them what you've gone through, how you've acquired this knowledge, how you've seen it help, that relation is going to break down that barrier and really bring that reader into wanting to learn more about you. Progress, not perfection. Your book will never be perfect, even if it's been edited 5 times and published. I've caught errors in Stephen King books. So that's not to say you still don't want to put out the best product possible, but as you write, don't edit as you go and don't censor yourself. I have too many people say, Matt, I don't know if I want to share this with people. And my answer is always the same. That's fine. Share it with yourself. Like, at least put it down on paper. Share it with me, right? If you're comfortable enough working with me, I hope so. You paid me enough money. I'm not going to put it in the book if you tell me not to, but don't censor yourself until you know exactly what your finished book looks like. Because there are times that thing that you think you didn't want to put in there is the thing that ties your whole book together. And there's other times that thing that you think has to be in your book, when you get to the end, you realize really didn't need to be there. Don't let any of that stop you along the way. Put it all down, figure out where it might fit, and then work through it. So it's never too early. Don't be afraid to tell people that you're writing a book. Your network will actually help promote you and keep you accountable. I think everyone in V50 knows that for a fact. If you were to tell Lane and Alan tomorrow that you've got a book coming out or you're working on a book, probably going to ask you a couple times a month how that book is coming along and when people can read it and where they can buy it. Once enough people start asking you when your book is coming out, you have no choice but to finish it, because now you don't just owe it to yourself. You owe it to everybody who's expecting your book. So hold yourself accountable by telling other people you're doing it. Marketing anything takes time and consistency. The sooner you start doing it, the better. You never know. Again, V50 is a key indicator of this. You never know who knows somebody. So if you tell somebody you're writing a book and it's on cost saving, someone may say, hey, so-and-so in V50 does that, and they have this person in this podcast who can get you on to talk about that book. So the quicker you start marketing it, the more it will help your sales later. Create promotional material, pre-order links, and a social media presence. So most of us are great with our LinkedIn. If that's your main platform, let people know on there you've got your book coming out. As soon as you have some idea of what you want your cover to look like, start working on mock-ups and involve your reader. So if you've got 3 different ideas for your book cover and you're not sure which one, put them all on LinkedIn and let your audience, let your followers tell you their feedback. Because now you're not only getting real world input, you're also bringing people into the writing process with you, which is going to make them more invested and possibly wanting to buy and share your book with others. Pre-order links, social media. There could be a whole course in that I'm not fit to teach. I could bring in someone who does our social media marketing and things like that. I know just enough to be dangerous, but I do know enough to tell you to think about it early on. Consider video book trailers and author or book specific websites. If you're writing a book or have written a book, talk to Neko. Neko puts together some amazing video testimonials. In some of the testimonials he's put together for me on my clients, we've gotten to speaking about doing video book trailers. And those are things that he can do and I think are an incredible resource. People these days watch video far more than they read anything. So if you've got a 30-second video book trailer you put on your LinkedIn, you'll probably get a lot more traction than if you put a paragraph of a description of your book. Same thing with author-specific websites. These days, I mean, it doesn't cost a whole lot to get a one-page website up. Get your book out there, promote it, bring people into your world. Or if you got your own website, make sure your book is there and you're driving people there so you know who is interested in your book and how you're going to keep them in your world. And that is actually the end of part 2.
Very informative, my friend.
Well, thank you. I know that was a lot of information. Actually, I didn't realize probably more information than week 1, but this is also kind of the really rubber meets the road part of it. The first section was all theory. The third section is now we're done. What do we do? This is that section of, hey, are we going to do it? And if so, this is how, and this is everything. I never want someone to be overwhelmed 3 months into a project and go, oh my God, I didn't think about this. There are a lot of moving pieces, but if you know them all up front and you make a plan, it's a lot easier to tackle them.
And you can share that presentation with us, right, Matt?
Absolutely.
That'd be great. I can get that distributed. And a couple of things you said that, were so true just within the community. If you're not talking about it, nobody's listening. When we found out, on Monday's breakout, and it always happens during breakouts and just in conversation when you're talking about something or have a need for something, or there's always somebody we can go to that can fulfill that request and that answer, which has been pretty amazing.
Any other
Let me ask you a quick questions.
Please.
So your process in like this whole presentation, you're you're doing the writing part, or you're helping authors write the process, correct? You're not doing anything else besides that, right?
So honestly, Fred, it depends on the client. We're pretty flexible. I have some clients that we really just do the coaching and they do all of the writing. I will say, for the most part, I do prefer the ghostwriting because at least I'm in control of the output. With the coaching, it's they really have to understand everything that I just took you guys through, like accountability. Like, you have to do the work. I can't, unless you're going to pay me to do it for you, which I will. I can't do the work for you. And I've had some great coaching experience with clients who got it. They needed this book out. I've had some others where it's, it's still going, but it's a little slower. And they've acknowledged that it's because they're not dedicating the time they need to. But at least 75% of our clients are ones where in some way, shape, or form, we're meeting with them, we're building the outline, and we're helping them put their words out there, and then we're turning it into the written content.
Will you help the client go through the business side of it? Is that part of the coaching as well, or is it strictly within the writing?
So when you mean go through the business side of it, like how to use it as a business tool?
No. So how you explain to get it to market, either doing it yourself or going with somebody else, that process.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, usually before we even start working with somebody, before there's a contract signed, we've explained a lot of what you saw on the slides, the differences between traditional and independent publishing. That falls into what is your measurement of success. We want to know before we even take your money and start working that we are aligned and that we're looking for the same thing. Because if I write for 6 months thinking you want to independently publish and then find out at the end that you want to get a traditional publishing contract, it's a really bad experience for everybody because we just lost 6 months. So we are very cognizant of that. I showed a graphic last week, which kind of had the time frames of when different things should start. And we're very good at reminding people like, okay, we're kind of at that point now where we should start getting your cover design going. You should start working with a social media person or doing it yourself. So yes, we will guide the client through all of that. And if they say, we just want you to do everything, we will do that final upload for them. We have a cover designer, a phenomenal cover designer who will do their cover. Everything else though, just because it's a little too far out of the lane, we'll refer out. I have 2 trusted partners who do public relations, 2 trusted partners who do social media management. Neko, who does the video trailers. I have 2 trusted partners who do the author websites. So anything like that, where a client of ours expresses interest, we always make the two introductions and let them decide if that's someone they want to work with. But otherwise, we will handle the book itself, finished package, interior formatting, cover design, and upload to Amazon completely on their behalf.
And do you, when you said you do a lot of that stuff up front, do you bill that in as part of your package on the back end, or do you charge up front for kind of that semi-coaching on where they're going to be self-published or go to somebody else?
Honestly, that I give that information to everyone, whether they sign a contract or not. So for me, that's just personally good business and financial education. I don't want to start working with somebody if they're not fully understanding of what's going to happen and what they're going to get by the end of the process. So if someone doesn't want to work with us, great. If someone does, I've already built doing all of that for them into the price we charge everyone.
That seems like it's a little time consuming though too, right? I mean, that upfront.
Yeah, I mean, normally our average is probably 2 consultations with someone before they sign a contract. So about an hour.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
I went incredibly detailed here for you, like in this 3-part seminar. When we're working with someone, a little bit of a higher level outline of, hey, these are the things you need to be aware of. Once we're working together, when it gets to go to the time of you need to do social media, then we'll have that conversation.
I'm always interested in how the money flows in different industries. So that's why I asked that question.
I know, I appreciate the question. And a lot of people sometimes think when they hear the price for the book, like, wow, it's a lot of money. But when you take into all of the education up front and the amount of hours that it takes to actually write a book, you're usually talking at least 20 hours on Zoom with the client, and then another 60 to 120 hours of writing time behind the scenes. And then you got to edit.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome.
One of my, oh, sorry.
Please go ahead.
Okay. One of my favorite questions that potential clients ask is like our success rate or something like that. Like, what is our success rate and how much money, like, can we guarantee them and stuff like that? And it's like, well, our success rate is 100% because we finish 100% of our books, but the money that you make from a book is entirely up to you. Like, you can do nothing with the book once we finish it, and then that's on you and you get nothing, or you can really market it and do something with it. So the success of the book is really up to the client.
Nor are we in the business of coming to past clients and saying, hey, how much money have you made from your book sale? I mean, if you want to share that with me, great, but not really a metric we track. Amir, I see you have your hand up.
I do. I thought, first of all, I want to thank you very much for sharing this, because it's a lot of effort, blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into this advice and information that you're sharing. And I wanted you to know that I appreciate it.
Thank you, Amir.
I know how much you've been able to do to be able to share this. Simplicity breeds complexity. When you see something so simple, you have to realize how much complexity was involved to make this. So I want to thank you. I'd like to make a suggestion for the V50 community. And there are obviously author wannabes who have been procrastinating, have been dreaming for some time. If you follow, this is just a suggestion, if you follow the same format, let's say it's going to take maybe about, for you, let's say 6 months to put a book together, or 4 months, you pick your number. Every week, break it down, and in our V50 Thursday cocktail hour get together, come up with something of an agreement with Alan and Lane that would ask, had you started your book, you would have been 300 words into it, and then continue 600, 1200, 2400, and this is this many pages, and start with 1 quarter, 90 days, and then let 90 days go by, and just remind those people that need reinforcement, that need reminding, that had you started 3 months ago, you would have been here. And this is how we would have been able to help you get here. And I think that if you want to do, on an altruistic way, when you want to make an impact, you never know when you make a suggestions like that from your heart, how it resonates with certain people and how you actually have the opportunity to change the trajectory of their lives, changing them from author wannabes to an actual published authors.
So, that's an amazing suggestion in here. There's something that happens in November called NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, where all aspiring novel writers get all amped up and they commit to writing 50,000 words by the end of the month. And there's an entire community around this where everyone holds each other accountable. There should be something like that for aspiring nonfiction authors.
Well, everything is a fiction. I mean, even your own autobiography is a fiction. It's, I know it's a documentary or something. It's like, if you help somebody be inspired to just put their story down, then, it's $5,000, $7,000, $10,000. Just imagine how many steak dinners they spent money on, how many beers and champagne bottles they bought. I'm a guest speaker at Pace Law School, and to the graduating students, I share this champagne retirement on a beer budget. And just, take time, compounding. I think that you can change lives, Matt. You can change lives. And the conduit is V50, which means indirectly it's Lane and Alan.
I love it, Amir. Thank you. And I hope you're coming to White Plains tomorrow.
I am.
Beautiful.
Sounds
I
like
would
another
not miss the opportunity to shake your hand in person. Matt, Lane, are you coming?
Well, now that you're on the call, yes, I am.
Wonderful.
We knew our paths would cross at some point, Amir.
I know. Katrina, it's just a short flight. I can even do some crowd fundraising to get your flight ticket.
I'll pay for the flight. You got witnesses. I'll pay for it.
Oh, nice.
Did you look at that?
Wow.
Just asked and answered.
I didn't say round trip. Might want to keep you here for a little while. I promised Katrina when I got to get on a plane for a V50 trip, first place is north of the border. I still have a valid passport, no restrictions.
Nice.
Katrina, you're in Toronto, right?
I'm just outside of Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I have cousins over there, and they have the greatest, outside Los Angeles, they have the greatest number of Persian food restaurants over there. I'm hoping that maybe in May, I'll take a trip out there with my son, and maybe we'll arrange to say hello to each other in person.
That would be lovely. I'm just outside.
I'll
of
buy the
city.
Persian food.
I'm just outside, closer to a lake district. So it's very picturesque where I am. Not so city.
We should take a picture of it. And like me, this is, I was at a
That's not
contest
where
for
you live.
Toastmasters. I gave him a humorous story about my high school days in Hollywood High, and that's why I haven't changed the backdrop.
Oh, I thought you were commemorating the Oscars from Sunday night. Oh, okay.
Oh my goodness, that needs no commemoration. It is forever in the annals of history, never to be repeated and never to have been seen before.
That's why we have V50.
Thank God.
Thank you all for coming today, Matt. This was special, and let's come up with an idea based off Amir's idea and figure out how to keep promoting and pushing people to get with you and make it a reality.
Fred Costa. Fred Costa has 2 stories in him that would be such an inspiring story if he puts his heart into it to change the trajectory of lives of others. Fred Costa is an author, a gem that needs to be polished. I made that suggestion purely for the sake of Fred Costa.
Thank you, sir.
And I've been meaning to put together some type of free group event, ongoing standing time every week where people can show up, bring their ideas. So Amir, with your suggestion, I'm going to finally figure out how to bring this all together and make it click.
What do you know? Once again, Hollywood brought you an idea.
And Matt, you got 24 hours because the 3 of us will collaborate tomorrow at this time about it.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you all.
you
Enjoy
all.
the rest of your day.
you.
See everybody soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.